In the name of God, Creator, Redeemer, and Breath of Life. Amen. Please be seated. I have to admit, 10 years ago, you would never hear the words coming out of my mouth, and I would be shocked at myself to say so. But there's this Taylor Swift song that I really like. It's called You Need to Calm Down. It's basically talking about the people who think that they can go on social media, particularly Twitter, and spew hatred and venom and bile at people. And it's really kind of a cowardly move. It's one thing if you say it on the street, that's a knockout, but if you say it in a tweet, it's a cop-out. But basically, like, it's saying some hateful thing. She's like, man, it's 7 a.m. Are you okay? It's like one of our friends who someone was criticizing her in her opening class with Gwen about eating her guacamole, and she's like, are you okay, bro? And the whole class erupted. It's like, let's calm down a little bit. Well, you might be wondering why I'm talking about Taylor Swift on Pentecost Sunday. Well, I'm glad you asked. I shall tell you. I love the story in Numbers. First of all, I get really itchy when the lectionary doesn't do anything from the Old Testament, because I don't think that's the best way to go about things. There's a lot of things we need to know in the New Testament, but there are also a lot of really problematic aspects of the New Testament, which is doubly important to be aware of these days where anti-Semitism is on the rise again. But anyway, Numbers. Moses, prior to this passage, has been trying to do everything and has been called by God to lead, and he's been leading basically by himself. He's sort of the mediator between the people and God, and he's like, God, enough. I would rather die than keep doing this. Moses was known for understatement. He wasn't a very emotional person. And God said, okay, gather 70 elders and have them around the tent, and I will bless them. And he puts the spirit that was on Moses, I wonder what spirit that could be, and puts it on the heads of the 70 elders. Now, this signifies that for forever and ever, amen, there are 70, which again, numerology, 70 is a significant number of people that will carry out and help in the ministry that Moses has been called to do. Now, how many people did Jesus send out 2 by 2 in one of the Gospels? Nope. Good guess. Bigger. You might have heard it already in my sermon. 70. Once again, motif. There is not a lot new in the New Testament. But anyway, so these 70 elders get the blessing of the Spirit. Well, wait a minute. There are only 68 around the tent. Normally, I would expect a guy like, nope, you're wrong. You don't get this because you don't have everyone together. 2 are out in the camp still. Doesn't matter. They still get the blessing of the Spirit, even if they weren't there. I don't know why they were there. Did they sleep in? Were they afraid? Were they not sure what was going on? Did they not really want to be chosen? Doesn't matter. They still got the blessing. So God's Spirit is moving out and empowering more and more people to do the work that God has called them to do. You know that self-righteous tattletale that you couldn't stand in middle school or grade school? One of them goes up like, Moses, there are 2 people out here that weren't there that are prophesying. That's how I hear it in my head. And, the overzealous assistant, the person who's the right-hand person, because Joshua, son of Nun, will take over when Moses dies. It's like, my Lord Moses, stop them from prophesying. I feel like Moses is like, are you okay, bro? Like, relax, calm down. He's like, would that everyone was called by God to prophesy. Would that God gave God's Spirit to everyone so that all could do the work. So you'll check yourself before you wreck yourself, man. Come on, slow down. Wait a minute. Who are you to decide who can and cannot receive the Spirit? Whose job is it to decide who can and cannot receive God's Spirit? God, exactly. And if God gave it to everyone, why on earth would you think you have the right to say something? Well, fast forwarding to the story of Pentecost in the New Testament, which is interesting that John and Acts are actually telling the same story in these 2 readings. very differently. But ultimately, the Spirit comes upon all 12 of the disciples, or 11 of the disciples in that room, because at this point, Judas, according to Acts, had fell over and his insides exploded on the field that he bought with the 30 pieces of silver. The Bible's really gory. Anyway, sorry. Back to the focus. But what happens is they are up in the upper room. Now again, to quell any anti-Judaism or anti-Semitism that might come from this, John's gospel is deliberately trying to pin the enemy on the Jewish people, or the Jews, whatever that meant for him. But let's face it, they were up there because they were afraid of the Romans. So, but either way, Jesus came and said, "Peace be with you," which is about as Jewish as you can get. Shalom Aleichem, or Salam Aleikum in Arabic. I'm giving you my spirit, my breath, my ruach, my pneuma. Go out and do the work I've called you to do. I am no longer the only one doing this. I never really was. I am giving part of my spirit to you. Does that sound familiar? Sounds a lot like Numbers, doesn't it? And so they go out into the community and they start speaking, and yet everyone from all over the world, all over the diaspora that are Jews, can start hearing in their own native language. I get a kick out of that one guy in the background. They're just drunk. And I love how Peter's like, "No, they're not. It's only 9 in the morning." I'm like, clearly you've never been on a plane that caught on fire on the tarmac. That actually happened on our way out of our honeymoon. We almost took off with the engine on fire. So needless to say, there were a couple martinis had when we got back off that plane waiting for the next one. But normally, not so much. Anyhow, but again, why would it make sense to be drunk and speaking in other languages? I digress. Sorry, I'm a little ADD today. And what's interesting is that, and we'll probably see next week in the readings from Acts, that Peter starts accusing all the people of Jerusalem of killing Jesus. Which again, is it really your place to say this, Peter? Is it really your right to judge? Should you be limiting this to only those who believe in this? Didn't Moses say himself, "Would that God poured out God's Spirit on everyone"? And that's what Joel's prophecy was supposed to be pointing to. So there's this old blues line that comes along every once in a while, like, if you're not down with what's going on, sit down, shut up, and let the gentleman do his thing. Or let the gentlewoman in this case, I think. I tend to see the Spirit more as female than male. It makes more sense to my mind. But either way, guys, sit down, shut up, and let the Spirit breathe. Let God show you where God is taking us. Let God be the one who decides who gets the portion of the Spirit. Let God help us understand why we're getting the Spirit in the first place. Because how can you do the work of the Spirit if you don't know what the Spirit is trying to tell you? It's very easy to think that we know best, or that we've got this because we've got a little sliver here, a little sliver there, when the Spirit keeps breathing on us and has to keep breathing on us to help remind us. What is the greatest commandment of all in Torah? How many times have I asked you this question? Millions of times.
Love your neighbor as yourself.
Love your neighbor as yourself. And who else?
Love God.
Well, God, yeah. So if the purpose of the Spirit, who breathed on and rested upon Moses, gave us Torah, gave us these commandments, is the same Spirit that breathed on the apostles given by Jesus, and that Spirit teaches us that love of God, neighbor, and of self is the culmination of everything, who are we to say who does and who does not get that Spirit? Who are we to deny God when God gives God's self to everyone? Right now, this year in Pentecost is especially important that we remember that all God's children are all God's children. All. Everyone. Doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your sexuality, doesn't matter your ethnicity, doesn't matter how good you can speak English or any other language for that matter. It doesn't matter what your politics are. It doesn't matter how young or old you are. No one gets denied God. And we, as the people of God, are being refreshed by the Spirit to remember that our job in the world, in our own place, we can't affect everything, but in our lives, we are called to let God's Spirit breathe in us, to teach us, to listen to her, and see where she is asking us to expand our hearts, to love people that we might not agree with, to love those who we have trouble loving, to love ourselves when we feel like we are not worthy of that love, and to build beloved community where it doesn't matter who you are, you're here, you're part of our family, and it doesn't matter who you are. If you're part of our family, God's Spirit is going to challenge you to grow. God's going to make us uncomfortable. God's going to stretch us. God's going to encourage us. God's going to comfort us. But that courage that we are emboldened with by the grace of God's Spirit guarantees that if we are willing to take those steps, the Spirit will do more than we could ever imagine. It feels like a lifetime ago that I was here for our wedding, because so much transformation has happened in our lives. And I'm so excited to see where that takes Gwen and me. But also I'm excited to see where the new opportunities that we are being given together gives us opportunities as a community here. So in a world right now that's really good at being that little tattletale or being Joshua son of Nun, saying stop allowing them to be who they are, stop allowing God to breathe through them, let us remember what Moses said. Are you jealous for me? No, I wish everyone had what I have. Everyone does have what Moses has. Maybe not the same calling, but the same spirit, the same breath, the same pneuma. Let us breathe in the Spirit of God afresh and anew, and let her heal us. Let her give life to us. And as we exhale her, share in the world around us that same life that God gives, that no one can give, no one can take away. May we give room for the Spirit of God in our lives, who breathes to us love of everyone. Amen.